Hello, everyone. Welcome to another webinar of Suvichar. And we have with us two very illustrious personalities today, Dr. Simmi Waraich, who's just joined us, and Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, who has been a wonderful speaker for Suvichar and Vibrant Forum on various occasions. Welcome, Ambassador Prakash, and welcome, Dr. Waraich.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Right. So I'll just give a brief introduction of the two speakers and the format and the topic, and then we'll dive deep into it. Ambassador Prakash is a gold medalist in his education years with over 35 years in the saddle in the Indian Foreign Service. Pardon me, sir. He's been ambassador to China and Canada, been consul general in various places. He's also been serving throughout the world in various capacities. He is a writer and a speaker presently, and a thinker on international relations especially. He is a wonderful analyst, writes very promptly and very expertly on international issues. And I have always found him to be a cheerful, witty, peppy persona on stage or on screen, where we have met each time. We have never met in real life, but wonderful to have you here, sir. And in this virtual world, we're making the most of your largesse and your acceptance of our invitations. A very warm welcome once again.
Thank you very much.
And Dr. Simmi is from Chandigarh presently. She is a consultant at Fortis Hospital. Her subject is psychiatry, and she has been serving in Australia. Her interests are adolescent psychiatry and women's mental health, along with drug abuse prevention. She believes in primary prevention and building community awareness and participation in drug abuse. She writes regular articles as well in newspapers and magazines to increase awareness about psychiatric disorders. And she's very fond of writing, reading, traveling, and bird watching. Wonderful. I think we share a lot of interests among this group. We are all writers. We all love reading and traveling. I'm sure Mr. Vishnu Prakash is, of course, the traveler who we can't beat, has lived obviously in many countries as well. And bird watching, sir and ma'am, I have recently picked up as a passion. I have an app called Bird Net, which tells me which bird is crooning above me. So I switch it on and it listens to the sound and tells me that this is the bird. So wow. I find it very fascinating. I've started photographing some of them, though I'm not an expert, and I use my phone camera. But more of that later. Once again, a very warm welcome to you, Dr. Simmi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Atray.
We have spoken also together at least one platform, I remember, maybe two. It's been a pleasure always. And thank you very much for joining us. So this is a series of webinars by Suvichar, and the logo of Suvichar is there somewhere above the screen. Basically, it's a think tank which is promoting the right sort of thought in society. And we're trying to, at this time of crisis and pandemic and people feeling low, we are trying to motivate a lot of people to motivate others. And motivation is often a misused or overused word, but basically the idea is that instead of looking down the dungeons and the drains and looking into the soil and looking at the bad stuff, whatever we see around us, we look up at the sky and the birds and the trees and the breeze and feel the breeze. So the point being that good and bad exists at the same time, and society goes through ups and downs. People go through ups and downs. Why should we look at difficult times with fear and trepidation and worry and stress and anxiety more than what is essential or necessary for us to be vigilant and careful? Of course, the last 1.25 years has not been a piece of cake for anybody. It's been a tough time. The world has been in the throes of this crisis. Indian society has also suffered. And the second wave, the tsunami-like second wave, has particularly really shattered the morale of a lot of people. And I personally have lost a few friends. People have lost someone somewhere in the extended family. It's been tough. And those who haven't have also been fearful and worried. And also, just to add context, and before I pass the baton on to the two speakers, also there have been times when the smartphone has been the only ally of a human being, and that smartphone has not been smart enough to give him or her any feel good feelings. And usually, what has been emanating from that screen has been despondency and despair and depression. And so much so that Dr. Simmi will tell you that a patient who is otherwise physically so, or you can probably pull out of a crisis or an illness, because of the psychological state of being not being up to the mark or feeling low, and in isolation perhaps with only a phone, obviously the physical condition also suffers, and the immunity of people also suffers when they are fearful and worried. So with this background and the fact that we have been organizing these Motivate the Motivator webinars, although I've set a very dark picture of what is happening, the need for us to be peppy and cheerful as far as possible, at least not spread worry and fear, couldn't be more stressed. So with these opening thoughts and opening set of thoughts, maybe from Ambassador Prakash first and then Dr. Simmi, on how they have been in these past few months or more months, and how have they been handling it, and then we'll go on to what is their advice for the youth later. Sir, over to you.
Thank you. Dr. Waraich, my good friend Vivek Atray. Friends, I must tell you that I had given an arm-long bio to good friend Vivek to read out, and he has butchered it. He has just used 5% of that, but he promises that 95% will be done later. I thank you,
Yes,
Vivek. And you can clearly make out that we have a mutual admiration society, but more about that later. Vivek, you have actually set the tone when you say feel the breeze, hear the birds chirping, enjoy the beauty of the flowers. I think that is what is the need of the hour. I'd agreed with some trepidation to join you today to address my friends who are listening in. I would have much rather met them in person in happier circumstances, but as Shakespeare said, beggars cannot be choosers. Now, COVID, enough has been said about it. It's a black swan event. Uh, Perhaps no living person has ever faced something like that. Experts had anticipated it, but had hoped that it will not happen. And as Vivek said, it has been most disruptive, destructive, and worrisome, particularly for the millennials and the Zoomers, Generation Z. By the way, I learned this word recently. It has deprived many of you, and I'm basically addressing it to the millennials and Zoomers, have deprived you of campus experience, opportunities of traveling, partying, dating. Companies have deferred hiring. There have been delays in starting your careers. Or if you're working from home, you are missing the camaraderie, the peer interaction, the discussion over coffee. And some youngsters tell me that it's the best part. Some say that it's the worst part of being confined at homes with a tribe called the parents. Uh, there are some have come closer, some have not. Well, let me tell you that the parents have similar feelings despite the facade that they put on. I was posted in Korea once when the Korean ambassador's wife told me that when the children come, she's very happy. When they leave, they are happier. We'll talk about it later if you want to, but I just wanted to make sure that you know that it's not just you feeling that. Whatever you feel, the parents also, the tribe also feels. Now that we have established ground rules, let us look at choices. You have two choices, friends. COVID is a reality. It is not going to go away. It will mutate or may mutate. Let's be prepared for the worst. So you have two choices: keep worrying, complaining, or decide that, well, this is something that you're going to take it in your stride. You have to realize that everyone is in the same boat and everyone is looking for cheerful people, positive people. And yes, smile begets a smile, positivity begets positivity. So, what can be done to lighten the mood, introduce positivity, how to bounce back, in other words? And I wanted when I was requested to speak about that, I decided not to give you my wisdom, which you will not relate to, but wisdom is in quotations. I spoke to a number of youngsters, millennials and Zoomers in India and abroad. And I got some very interesting feedback, and I'm going to share that. So I wish I can take ownership of the coping mechanisms, but no, I cannot. One youngster that I spoke to said that one should apply the Zujitsu technique. Now, what is Zujitsu technique? You know, somebody punches you, you block it, it does harm. If you turn that force, if you utilize that force to turn things around, it's different. So instead of punching, blocking the punch, if you hold the arm and nudge it towards you, you destabilize the opponent. So imagine you doing the same thing, that apply this technique to the pandemic. Now, one youngster told me that after brooding for many weeks, being in the blues, he had a eureka moment. They are a family of 5 comprising of parents, a grandparent, grandfather, and sister. And it so happened that all of them were interested in watching soaps and movies. They all liked mimicking. So one fine morning he said, let's enact them. So they started enacting small out. They would take a snippet from a movie and start enacting it. And gradually the inhibitions loosened, and they started having fun. The atmosphere changed. After dinner, it became something that they looked forward to. And guess what? Now they are planning to do a movie and post 5-minute snippets every day on Instagram as a series. I mean, imagine how they have turned things around. But it is not just confined to making a movie. Anything that you want, you can take up any activity that you've been wanting to, cooking, music, magic. I mean, become a magician for heaven's sake, and you have the world opening up to you through this medium of social media. Stand-up comedy, painting. Long ago, I mean, this is not COVID, this is much, much pre-COVID. When I was posted in Tokyo, my children were young and they came up to me and said, we have a request. And I said, Mar gaye. I mean, if the children have a request, there is something serious. He said, please don't let's buy a TV. Let us spend 3 hours every day on the dinner table. It was magic. It was magic. 3 hours every day, we discussed everything under the sun. We came closer. I mean, try that out. Now, before I close, I want to also share another delightful story of a brilliant young lady. She's all of 20, and she agreed that I could disclose her identity. Her name is Pakhi, Pakhi Gaoba, and she has just completed her graduation in international relations from MIT University. By the way, her title, and she's 20 by the way, her title is Founder and Director, the Conflux Revista Limited, registered under the 2006 Companies Act in the United Kingdom. Set up exactly 1 year ago. And what does Conflux do? It grooms youngsters in their 20s, school kids, in personality development, public speaking, emotional health. What do they charge? Zero. They get experts who charges them zero. And this young lady, all of 20, is doing that, and already 100 plus youngsters have benefited. By the way, she secured 55% or less in matriculation, decided that she is going to change things, scored 91% in her undergraduation. She has authored a book called Dear Papex. She calls her father Papex. Her interests are global politics, policy making, governance, human rights, etc., etc. She has virtually interned with several organizations, including Ministry of Social Justice, Young India Foundation, MIT, and her Instagram, which is she allowed me to share, is Pakhi, Pakhi, posts, POSTS. Now, the best part is, like Vivek, I've never met Pakhi in person. I met her once at virtually at a webinar where everything went smoothly. And I have since participated in a number of events that she has handled or she has facilitated. What keeps her going? I asked her. And the response was trying new things. Novelty energizes her, routine bores her. And she says that art is a therapy. Isolation has brought the family closer. And by the way, it is between you and me, not to be quoted. I want to adopt her. And if you have any tips on that, please let me know. I don't know how to approach her father. Good news is that she is a normal kid. She procrastinates. And she has one other shortcoming, which I will not tell you, which I have saved for some other time. So basically, folks, only you are responsible for how you feel. There is going to be adversity. It's for you to be weighed under or turn it around. You will turn it around and no adversity will come your way. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, sir. Very inspiring, very good thoughts. And I know that often you speak on international relations, the Putin and Biden meeting, or maybe I should say Biden and Putin as per protocol. But whatever it is, I know that you have these very sensitive matters to talk about. It's very nice of you to talk about such touching thoughts and the human aspects of the youth and how they need to gear up for the rest of whatever is coming and the rest of life. And it's very, very wonderful, the examples you gave. And now over to Dr. Simmi for her thoughts on how can people cope, and also a little more on perhaps one or two case studies or someone you counseled, or I'm sure you're meeting a lot more people these days than before. And that is something which is going to be the case perhaps in the years to come. Mental health is going to be a worry. So over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Atray. And so, yes, I think the pandemic, as you know, most people have already mentioned, along with the, the physical illness aspect of it, mental health has been largely impacted. And there, after any kind of disaster, any natural disaster, and this is a kind of a disaster that has, that's hit the entire world. And it's an illness that was unexpected. We still don't know what is really happening. They're changing treatment algorithms all the time. And so, because of the uncertainty associated with it, some people even feel uncertainty associated with the vaccine. So, it has led to, a kind of increase in mental illnesses, anxiety, depression, and not only just mild stress or anxiety, but clinical depression and clinical anxiety, the numbers have increased 2 to 3 fold. This is what some of the earlier studies have shown. And as it is, mental health is a largely neglected aspect, especially in many developing countries. We really need to start talking about these things at the school level. And just like, these days in schools, they are talking about childhood sexual abuse. They have workshops. Even the government schools counselors are being, uh, uh, they're being trained on how to do workshops in government schools to talk to them about childhood sexual abuse so that people can start talking about it. So similarly, we do need to start talking about mental health, because people still feel that a lot of it is something that you can control. And yes, you can. So that is the preventive aspect. So in COVID, with the increase in isolation, a lot of people are working from home, and some people have lost their jobs. There's so many people who had to go back to the villages. They lost their jobs. You see far fewer rickshaws, auto rickshaws. They've all gone back home. Even the hospitality industry. So it's hit even, the rural population, the middle class, to some, even the upper middle class, everyone. And so therefore, I think some of the impact will stay, but like Ambassador Vishnu Prakash very rightly said, that a lot of it is in your hands. And so I'm sure all of you must have heard of Viktor Frankl. He was a very famous psychiatrist. He was in the concentration camps, and uh, he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And eventually, he did, you know, he founded existential psychotherapy, basically, where you help someone to understand what meaning they can give to their life and how that meaning can give them purpose. So he also, though he was in the concentration camp, he helped others. He, in fact, wrote his book over there. And he used to write on single pages and then collect them and keep them with him. He tried to help others because he was a doctor, so he was allowed to do that for some of the inmates. So he also said that, everything can be taken away from a man, but one thing, the last thing, that is his freedom. And his freedom to choose his attitude in any set of circumstances. So I think, this attitude, or this freedom to choose our attitude at this time, is what matters. And those who have a why to live can bear anyhow. So even though the circumstances right now may be difficult, but as a lot of our songs say, that kabhi to subha hogi, है ना, वो सुबह, रात के बाद भी सुबह तो आती है. So I think we must not forget that. And for people who are at home, who are facing anxiety, yes, to be able to, have a routine. A lot of people who have a routine at home, that really helps them, because then they know what they have to do. A lot of people have hobbies. I think one good thing in the pandemic has been that a lot of people have picked up new hobbies. Earlier, a lot, there were many people who had no hobbies at all they did was watch TV or go to the malls. But how much TV can you watch? So a lot of young people, for them, they have had time, and maybe some of them had started playing in musical instruments. They're learning music on the phone and on the computer, because there's so much online now. So technology has its upside also. There are a lot of things you can learn online as well. But apart from that, I think spending time with family, or just, relishing the little things. And people have gone back maybe to a simpler way of life, then, because obviously with the lockdown, they can't be out all the time. They cannot be partying all the time. So all these things, I think, have made a lot of difference. And as a prevention, I think maybe what people have been doing may help them in the future. It might make people more resilient also. So I think we can also look at it in that way. I mean, Milkha Singh, who just died, he, faced so much adversity in his life. The partition, and then he came here with practically nothing. And then he tried for the army 3 times, and the fourth time he got in. And so, I mean, of course, he was a remarkable person. But I think somewhere in all of us, there we have to have the belief that there is something remarkable. And we have to have the belief that, we have some good and some thing in all of us at some level. We may not be as good as, a friend. We may not be as good as the topper in our class, or we may not be as good at sports as someone else. But whatever we have, if we keep working on that, or over time, you do get better at whatever you're doing. So I think that we need to focus on our own selves, and have some inner faith, have a routine to follow, some hobbies, some regular exercise. Yoga or deep breathing and pranayam are very helpful. And mindfulness meditation is something that's really helpful. Of course, there have been a lot of people who have faced a lot of things. A lot of young people have started so many new projects, like Vishnu Prakash, you was just saying, they, the girl he was talking about, there's so many other young people who have come together. They've started educating people about vaccines, or they were working to get oxygen concentrators and information to people, or some of them start off with serving meals to people who don't have the means, or collecting money for them. So I think somewhere, a lot of young people are also finding some purpose in this pandemic, which maybe, they may have overlooked otherwise. They have faced problems, like a lot of them, they've not been able to go to college. They're practically sitting at home and having online classes since 2 years now. And that's very difficult for young people to do with all the energy that they have. And, so we must, I think all of us, parents and families, we need to appreciate whatever they are doing. If they are being able to follow some routine, if they are going out and exercising even 4 days, 5 days in a week, we need to appreciate that. And we need to not be overcritical, because the time we are spending at home now together, it could be built, it could be building up new memories, it could be building up better memories. And those things are something that can help us in the future. Right?
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely, absolutely. I think very well said. I'll interrupt you here for a bit. I think you being an expert, I think you put it in a great compact manner, which everyone can understand. It's often a choice as well, isn't it? I mean, many people who are otherwise healthy, everything going for them. They have good family, they have good bonding, nothing physically happening. I mean, ultimately, if you look at it, a very small percentage of people have actually fallen ill to this virus, and then a very, very small percentage of that have passed away. Unfortunately, the number has grown in the recent past, and all of us know somebody who has. But there are so many people who otherwise have no reason to be fearful and worried and let their mental health suffer. But the human mind overthinks. And I also, as a speaker, I often address this issue among youngsters. They worry too much about the future. And obviously, it's okay to worry. People keep on even firing barbs in their direction at times. What do you keep doing all day long? Who's going to study? What will happen to your future? What about IIT Delhi? Your uncle went to IIT and you are going to be second rate and stuff like that. How can a youngster who's hearing this kind of thing all the time handle it? So basically, our choice is to be either, I mean, if we don't have anything pleasant to say, then perhaps we can hold back. But what do we do?
Bravo.
And that,
Bravo.
I'm sure both of you understand very well with your experience. We choose to let it out on people we love. And we don't talk in that manner to our boss or our neighbor or our formal contacts. The people we are closest to are the ones who see the worst side of us and the most negative side of us and the most angry side of us, the critical side of us. So they're probably some kind of inner strength and not taking the other person for granted, which has also been one of the characteristics of this pandemic. We took the whole environment for granted. We took a lot of things for granted. And I wrote somewhere that mankind did not exactly cover itself with glory in the last two or three decades by its conduct, behavior, vis-a-vis the environment, socially, the habits we adopted. And you work, ma'am, with a lot of drug abuse victims, as well as we've all seen the choices that people have made, which haven't been the best. So, and having said that, there is an opportunity here to reflect, pause, ponder, and bounce back by mending our ways in certain ways, taking those people who we took for granted a little more seriously and gently and lovingly, because they are the ones who actually matter. Understanding the generation gap is also very important. The parents have to understand that the youth are not going to, they don't have magic wands and they cannot always live up to the expectations that they have. And the youth have to understand that the parents also have reason for what they're saying. And they love the children ultimately, even if their methods may be wrong. So I think by understanding this, and especially at this time when people are feeling low, it can be sorted out to a great extent. Sir, I'm going to bounce back to you now and request you to tell us maybe one or two anecdotes or incidents from your career, or wherever, whatever in your life you would like to talk about, where you felt that the going was tough, but somehow things happened okay, or someone you counseled, or somebody who benefited from your sage advice, or whatever you'd like to tell us.
Thank you very much. I am so happy, gratified that you bring out this point of this, I would call it phenomena or challenge of those who you love the most, you are the most critical. And you do it willy-nilly. I mean, you think that you are helping them, but you don't. I have a real life example which kind of came as a shell body blow to me. I was posted in Tokyo when my son was 16 and ready to go to college. He one day said, "Dad, can we take a walk?" And that always rings alarm bells when, I said, "Oh, I've done something wrong, I guess." So as we were walking, he said, "Dad, am I allowed to commit mistakes?" I was actually not ready for that. And, the enormity of the question dawned on me. I said, "Can you give me a day to ponder it over?" And I reflected on that and found that I was literally micromanaging, literally micromanaging. I was telling him what to do, what not to do, kind of pointing, nitpicking. I'm very embarrassed to share that, but that's a fact. And next day when we talked to him, I apologized. I did not change in a hurry. I mean, I must say that I'm very consistent. Once you adopt bad habits, I mean, it stays, but I've tried. Not that he agrees that I've tried. He's 38 today, but I realize, and it is very important to let youngsters let, after all, they will grow up only if they commit mistakes. Unless there is something which is life threatening or something which is very damaging, I guess we should hold our counsel to ourselves generally. So that is very well taken. I was in a place called New York, posted in New York, generally quite happy with life. When I got a midnight call from, and you asked me to talk about an instance from my career, got a call at about 2 o'clock in the morning from my Joint Secretary Administration, which is obviously not the happiest of news. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, he asked me whether I was sleeping. So I obviously assured him that no, I was kind of up and about and writing a report for the Ministry of External Affairs. But he said, "I've been chosen, mind you, for a very challenging assignment to go to Vladivostok as the Consul General." And this is when I was barely 10 years into the service, or not yet, 10 years into service. And I knew what a chosen meant and a challenging assignment meant. Vladivostok was beyond nowhere. Nobody had a queue. It was the Wild West. I stayed in a hotel which was, my adjoining room was with the mafia guys. And my wife is vegetarian, there was no vegetarian food. I mean, it was literally being confined to the wilderness. And the best part was when I reached Vladivostok, and since I happened to be the first consul general in the world to set foot in Vladivostok, the media was there and they asked me, "Mr. Consul General, is there any difference between New York and Vladivostok?" So that reply is for another day. But uh, it was either I could have moped and said, "I mean, why me?" Or I could have taken it as an opportunity. And God knows I took it as an opportunity. My jurisdiction was 6 million square kilometers, and I made the best of it. The ministry starts seeing the region through my eyes. It was pretty rudimentary. The flight from Moscow to Vladivostok was 9 hours, and this was 92. It was as if the aircraft was taken and shaken, like, shake a drum of grain so that the grain settles down and more passengers were stuffed in. And 9-hour flight, there was nothing to eat and drink, and there was usually a air hostess, which was a grandmother, who would come and say, "Coffee?" So you would squirm and say, "No, ma'am, I don't want coffee." But well, that was that was Russia after the breakup of Soviet Union. So point is, it is you, it is you who make the choice. Believe me, there is an opportunity. It is not easy. There are no shortcuts. But once you get down to it, there is no looking back. Vivek?
Wonderful, sir. Wonderful. Really nice. Both the anecdotes, one very personal, which is very touching. I'm sure it must have taken a lot of inner strength to come up with that one, and touching, definitely. And the other one, I love it for its wit. And of course, there's only a minor difference between New York and Vladivostok.
No, I said that there was no difference, and I
You
got
said no.
headlines. I said no difference because I'm truthful as a diplomat, so I got headlines in the media.
Yes, sir. Vladivostok, I seem to remember, it's like one of those things which you remember there was this character in a movie called Dhurandhar Bhattavadikar. These are the kind of names and terms which you just use when you are saying, this sounds like some kind of story from Vladivostok, which is just out of imagination. But you actually were posted there. Wonderful thoughts. And we have from the audience some wonderful comments, which I'm just going to summarize. Renu Varun is suggesting that next time we should get deeper into uneasy topics, and perhaps Dr. Simmi will be invited for that discussion, because obviously uneasy topics are uneasy for diplomats and administrators to talk about. But definitely personal topics, which, yes, ma'am, we will definitely take them up. And Kalchima is complimenting us, saying that complex issues are being discussed very well. Ritu Nag is saying wonderful anecdote by Ambassador Prakash. And Roy De Silva, the principal, is saying that two of you have been to Toga, the St. Stephen's School. Hopefully, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash will also visit us. That means Dr. Simmi and I obviously have been there. So thank you, Principal De Silva, for that invitation on behalf of the Ambassador Prakash. I think I can extend that.
I gladly accept that invitation. Thank you.
Right. And so, coming to Dr. Simi once again, before we have a final rapid fire at the very end. So Dr. Simi, your thoughts on the way forward now? I mean, perhaps let's assume that some form of this crisis will stay with us. Let's assume, but we don't get into the worst also. And we say that life has to go on. We have to move on. You rightly said that so many ways in which we can bounce back. But what is your advice to society in general and people in general? What should they do with themselves, and how should they look at life ahead?
So over here, I'll just like to talk about one person. There was this man, and he doesn't mind my saying his name out here.
Sure.
Sandeep Sandhu. He was in fact writing a book on comparing Japji Saab to Hegel's philosophy, and he finished it. And I think his brother will eventually publish it. He was a really fascinating man. He had a love for literature, and he used to go for international conferences and present papers over there on T.S. Eliot's Wasteland and various poems. He was really well read. He unfortunately succumbed to COVID last year in the first wave. And I remember that I was quite upset that day. And recently, on his birthday, which was just last week, his wife and his son, called me up and said, "We'd like to come and meet you." And then they came and met me. And his wife, again, is an amazing woman. And she said that, I wanted to come today and meet the 2, 3 people who I felt that he really connected with. And one of them was you, one was a good friend of his, and then his mother. And she came and, she got me flowers, and then she gave me a big hug. And she said that, what this has made me learn is that to live each moment. And life is in the moment that we have. And it's very difficult, but I think even if we go out for a walk, if we can just live in the moment, whatever we are doing, even if one thing we can do in the moment, because she said that I'm here for him today, and I feel somewhere he will, it's important to me and to him, and somewhere maybe his soul will get some peace. But whatever life he lived, it was a good life. Whether he lived for, of course, we would have wanted that he lived for, 20, 30 years more. He was just 50 last year when he passed away. But she said that that's fine, and I accept it. Whether he was 50 or 40 or someone, it is difficult at times, but acceptance and to live in the moment, this is what this has taught me, she said. And she said that, I would like to now work with people who, like maybe in the hospice, or with people who are suffering end of life illnesses, because she says maybe I can help them through it, because I've been through this, and somewhere now I have the courage, I can talk to people about it. So that woman was so remarkable. And even Sandeep was someone who really meant a lot to all of us. In fact, he was part of our peer group. He had bipolar disorder, and he used to, we have a peer support group, and he used to give a lot of support to everyone on the group. And anytime anyone said that, I don't want to take my medication, he would say, don't do that. You have to go
Mhm.
to your doctor and don't decide things. So, there are people in this pandemic also who, like I said, have become stronger, maybe grown as people. And if some of us have not, that's also fine. That's
Yeah,
okay. I
yeah.
mean, so the thing is that tomorrow is always there, and each day is a new day. And, I hope somewhere we all are going to see a new tomorrow and maybe be more resilient.
Wonderful. In fact, what I really like about what you said, Dr. Simi, of course, a very inspiring example of Sandeep Sandhu, and the name seems familiar. I'm sure I know him somehow, Chandigarh being that kind of place. But very sad also to know that. But what I really liked about what you said is that touch of spirituality is also there, that mindfulness, living in the moment, the bigger picture, and being, if I can use the term, very hardened professional, obviously, having seen so many people and having met so many patients and having treated so many people over the years. And it must be such a tough job. And now with people suffering, to bring in that aspect of being kind to others and compassion and mindfulness and meditation perhaps, and the meaning of life, which we often miss, is really creditable, I must say. I'm going to go to Ambassador Prakash for his closing remarks. It's been a short and sweet and very, very intense discussion, if I may say so. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be inspired, because from the comments that I see, the viewers are extremely inspired. And what I can also tell you all is that we are live at 3 channels simultaneously, that is Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So I'm sure that people will view these recordings as well later. Over to you, sir, for one more message of happiness and positivity.
Thank you very much. It reminds me of somebody who was asked after the Second World War as to what was the greatest outcome of the Second World War. He thought for a moment and he said, I survived. We have to understand that we are the luckiest people because we have a gift of life. And if you when you open our eyes in the morning and we are still around, it's a great gift. So let's make the best of it. Uh, I don't think that this gift will last very long. Maybe it will last 10, 20, 30 years. Clock is ticking. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. Make the best.
Wonderful, sir. Very well said. And ma'am, any last message?
Uh, when I was younger, I used to, at times, of course, like everyone, you get your blues and they last for a couple of days and then you come out of it. So I used to find a few songs very uplifting. So some of my favorite songs, of course, like if you start singing, Raindrops on Roses and Whispers, these are a few of my favorite things.
Oh,
Or
wonderful. Huh?
another favorite one of mine used to be uh, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head
Yeah.
from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Well,
Of course, that also because Robert Redford is my favorite actor. So, but that song again, the blues they send to meet me won't defeat me. It won't be long till happiness steps up to greet me. So I
super,
think,
super.
some of these songs, I would just start singing them. And whether I'm good at singing or not. So I'm not going to do that here now. But like
We
they
can
say, you give,
practice, and next time we'll ask you to.
yeah. So like people give themselves a pep talk. So sometimes a few of your favorite songs are like a pep talk. And if you sing them to yourself, it lifts you up.
Yeah.
So we all need to
Absolutely.
identify a few things, that lift us up
Yeah.
and change the mood, so to say.
Absolutely. And I would add, because I speak on these topics, I would add music therapy. You already said writing therapy. When you write, you express, you let out your thoughts, you tear that paper up or send it to someone, it's up to you, or on your phone as well. You can paint, you can write poetry, you can do photography, you can partake of something which is good conversation, games with the family, sports. And ma'am will tell you 4 types of happy hormones are there: oxytocin, endorphins, serotonin, dopamine. All these come out of sports and conversation and good food and good company and music and all these kinds of things, which will make you extremely much happier than you are. It's all a choice ultimately. I can see Ambassador Prakash wants to say one more line. So over to you, sir.
Well, all I want to say is may your tribe increase, Vivek. The kind of tightly scripted talks that you bring about and you moderate and you add value, hats off to you. Delighted always to be on your program.
Thank you so much, sir. And thank you, Simi, ma'am.
Thank you.
Both
Thank you
of
so
you.
much,
Thank you
Mr.
very
Atray.
much for being here, and it's been a privilege and pleasure. And so, which I will continue to organize these inspirational talks until the world needs inspiration, which I guess is going to be for a long while to come. But we will keep doing our bit. All the best, and Jai Hind.